Have you ever been laughed at by the very people who were supposed to stand beside you? Brushed off like a joke at your own family reunion, until the moment life flipped the script? This story isn't about revenge. It's about quiet power, the kind that grows in silence, builds behind closed doors, and speaks volumes when you least expect it. Today, you're about to hear the true story of a woman who walked into a family gathering unwanted, unnoticed, and left with the one word that changed everything: boss. But before we begin, if you believe in stories where the underdog rises, where dignity is stronger than ego, and where justice finds its voice in the most unexpected moments, make sure to subscribe to Reddit Family Tales. We bring you real stories, told from the heart, stories like this one. Now, settle in, because this reunion, it's one her family will never forget. I didn't even know the reunion was happening, until my cousin Jen slipped and mentioned it in a group chat I wasn't supposed to be in. One quick message, a half-deleted line. Are you bringing Brian to the big thing next Saturday? Big thing? Saturday? I scrolled up, then down. Nothing else. No official message. No invitation. Nothing in my inbox. Nothing in the family WhatsApp group I'd apparently been accidentally removed from last year. Typical. See, I stopped being part of the picture years ago. Not because I moved away. Not because I did anything wrong. But because I made the one choice my family couldn't understand. I stepped out of their shadow and built a life on my own terms. No help, no handouts, just long nights, cheap coffee, and a quiet kind of determination that doesn't fit into family gossip. They laughed when I dropped out of med school, said I couldn't handle it. They laughed when I started freelancing, called me unemployed. They laughed when I didn't show up to Christmas one year, called me selfish, not realizing I'd spent the night working a deadline that paid for my rent and heat. And now they were having a reunion. A massive one, judging from the buzz. At Uncle David's lake house, the one with the boats, the dock, the expensive wine nobody really likes but pretends to. And I wasn't invited. But here's the thing about being excluded for so long. You stop needing permission to exist. You stop asking if it's okay to show up. So I bought a dress. Navy blue. Simple. Elegant. Something I wouldn't mind spilling wine on. I booked a rental car. And I drove 3 hours to the reunion I wasn't supposed to know about. I arrived just before golden hour, when the lake glowed like it had something to say. The lawn was already dotted with white folding chairs, overpriced charcuterie, and the clinking sounds of people pretending to be closer than they really were. I walked up slowly, letting my heels crunch the gravel just loud enough to be noticed. And oh, was I noticed. A few heads turned, some whispers, a fake smile from Aunt Linda, who quickly turned back to her drink like it had secrets. My brother, Derek, spotted me from across the patio, and I swear I saw his eyes widen before they rolled hard. He didn't say hi, didn't wave, he just leaned in and muttered something to his fiancée, who glanced at me, paused, and smiled. Not a sarcastic smile, not a smug one, but one of recognition, warmth. That was the first sign. The second came minutes later, when my cousin Mason, always the class clown, walked by and laughed. Literally laughed. Wow, didn't think you were gonna make it, he said, sipping his drink like he was the star of some sitcom and I was the punchline. You lost or something? I smiled, softly, not because it didn't hurt, but because I didn't need to prove anything anymore. No, I said, I'm exactly where I need to be. And that was just the beginning. I didn't know her name at first. Just that she was tall, elegant in that effortless way some women carry themselves, and standing beside my brother Derek with a kind of calm I didn't associate with anyone in this family. She was his fiancée. I figured that out quickly. She nodded at me once. Like she knew me. Like I wasn't some outsider who had just wandered in wearing the wrong dress. And maybe that should have been the first real warning bell in my mind, because no one in my family ever looked at me like that. With recognition. The reunion continued in that weird, slow motion way these things do. People milling around, pretending nothing was awkward. I saw people I hadn't spoken to in years, and they all did that same little dance. Surprise. Then forced smile. Then small talk laced with discomfort. I wasn't mad. Honestly, I wasn't even bitter anymore. I'd spent too many years being angry, waiting for someone to say, "We were wrong." They never did. And eventually, I stopped needing it. But Derek? Derek had always been different. He was the golden child. Football in high school, scholarships, dad's favorite. When I got straight A's, I was doing what's expected. When Derek passed a class with a B, there were balloons and a steak dinner. When I got my first client contract, real money, a big name, I told him about it. Proud. He blinked and said, "Oh, you still doing that little online thing?" Little online thing. So yeah, when I watched him swan around the patio, holding court like some kind of suburban prince, I kept my distance. But I saw her watching me. His fiancée. She was graceful, yes, but there was something sharp in her. Quiet sharp. The kind of woman who hears everything even when she says nothing. And then came the moment. I'd stepped aside to take a call from a client, just a quick check-in. I'd built my consulting agency from scratch over the last 4 years, working with mid-sized startups that needed growth strategies. I didn't advertise what I did. Not to family, especially not to them. But she overheard. I saw her out of the corner of my eye. Just standing nearby, not eavesdropping, just present. I ended the call, turned, and she smiled again. "That was impressive," she said. Do you work with tech startups often?" I blinked. "Yeah, mostly early stage. I help them scale." "Why?" She laughed gently, brushing a loose curl from her cheek. "That's actually what I do too. I'm in product design, but I've been struggling with finding a decent strategist who actually understands founders. They always feel corporate." I couldn't help but smile. "Yeah, that's exactly the gap I try to fill." We talked for 10 minutes. Maybe 15. I was stunned by how natural it felt. Genuine. Even. Then Derek came over, all swagger and show. "There you are," he said to her, not even acknowledging me. "Thought you got kidnapped by a bush or something." She raised an eyebrow. "I was just talking with your sister," she said, calmly, clearly. "She's brilliant." And that was the first crack in his facade. He froze for half a second, blinked, then scoffed. "Brilliant's a stretch. She used to draw business plans in crayon." I didn't flinch. I didn't reply. But she turned to him, a slow, deliberate tilt of her head, and said, "Well, those crayons must have paid off. Because I just looked up her portfolio. You didn't tell me she was that kind of consultant." Derek's face changed color. I don't even know which shade. It was like red tried to compete with pale and lost. "How do you even know her full name?" he asked, voice a touch too high. She gave him a look that sliced straight through him. "I'm marrying you. I researched the people in your family." That was when I realized something. She wasn't just polite. She was smart, strategic, and far more aware than he realized. I think that was also when he realized he'd underestimated her too. The rest of the afternoon played like a slow game of chess. But I had no idea what kind of checkmate was coming. You know that feeling, when the room hasn't gone quiet, but something underneath it has shifted? That's what it felt like after she called me brilliant. Derek tried to recover, cracked a joke about not trusting consultants, then pivoted to something shallow about the wine tasting. But his fiancée, her name was Rachel. I learned, she wasn't following his lead anymore. She was following the thread. Me. Later, after the sun dipped low and the kids were chasing fireflies on the lawn, Rachel came and found me near the back patio, where the lights were soft and the music hadn't reached yet. "You left med school," she said softly, not accusing, just curious. I looked at her. "Yeah, I was good at it. But it wasn't mine. It was theirs. Their dream." She nodded slowly, like she understood that in her bones. "And now you're, what? Leading brand strategy for 5 startups?" 7, I said, smiling gently. 3 on retainer. 1 just secured Series A. She let out a low whistle, then sipped her drink. "Derek never mentioned any of that," she murmured. "Of course he didn't. To him, I'd always be the girl who disappointed our parents. The one who wasted potential. Who made Thanksgiving awkward by talking about things that didn't fit their narrative. He doesn't know. I said. He stopped asking about my life a long time ago. Rachel tilted her head. He told me you were distant. A little cold. That one stung. I looked her in the eye. Sometimes the only way to survive in this family is to stop bleeding in front of them. She didn't respond right away. Just stared out toward the lake. Then she whispered, I see that now. That moment, just that one sentence, felt like a dam cracking. Because suddenly, for the first time in years, someone inside the family saw me. Not as a cautionary tale. Not as a problem, but as a person. We didn't talk much more that night. She drifted back to Derek eventually. And I wandered into the dining tent, half hoping to grab dessert and disappear without further small talk. But then came the game. It's tradition at these reunions. Uncle David always organizes some lighthearted family trivia. Usually harmless. Childhood stories. Embarrassing photos. A few inside jokes. Except this year, someone got clever. Or maybe cruel. One of the questions. Which member of the family once dropped out of college in the middle of the semester without telling anyone? Laughter. Whispers. Eyes darting. Everyone knew the answer. And everyone looked at me. I stood up. Walked out. Not because I was embarrassed, but because I wasn't going to be their entertainment. Not anymore. I made it 10 steps down the path toward the cars when I heard a voice behind me. Clear. Commanding. Wait. Rachel. She jogged to catch up. Heels clicking fast. Face flushed. Not from shame. But anger. I'm so sorry, she said. That was out of line. I shrugged. It's fine. This is what they do. No, it's not, she said. Fire in her tone now. Not anymore. I'm not going to let them keep doing this to you. I blinked. Surprised. You just met me. She looked me square in the face. No, I just saw you. And then she said it. I want to work with you. Not just chat at a party. I've got a product team burning out because we can't figure out scaling. You're the solution we've been missing. I paused. Are you saying this because you feel bad? I'm saying this, she replied, because I've been in a dozen investor rooms where no one listened to me, until I showed them results. And I know that's what you bring. I didn't answer right away. Not because I didn't believe her. But because, for the first time in years, someone from my brother's world wasn't laughing. She was reaching. And I had a feeling that reach would lead to something much bigger than this reunion. We didn't talk much after that night, not in person anyway. But 3 days later, Rachel sent me an email. The subject line was simple. Follow up from the lake. Inside was a short note thanking me for the conversation, followed by a meeting invite. No fluff, no apology, just a calendar link for a private Zoom session. Labeled, Product Growth Brainstorm. I stared at the screen for a while, unsure what to make of it. Part of me wondered if it was real. If it was a pity offer. A way to smooth over the family drama she'd walked into. But the professionalism in her tone told me otherwise. This wasn't about Derek. This was business. So I clicked accept. And 48 hours later, I found myself face to face with her again, only this time. It wasn't at a family event. It was in a sleek, branded Zoom background with her company's name glowing in the corner, Lunara. A mid-stage tech startup I'd heard of. Actually, female-led, sustainability-focused, funded but not bloated. She was joined by her co-founder, a soft-spoken coder named Priya, who did more listening than talking, but asked sharp, technical questions when it mattered. I shared my screen, walked them through a few strategies I'd built for companies at a similar stage. Showed them how churn was killing their margins. Not outreach. Showed them how to turn user feedback into actual growth, not just pretty dashboards for investors. And I'll never forget the moment Rachel muted herself, turned to Priya, and whispered, forgetting she was still visible. She's exactly what we need. 3 weeks later, we signed a short-term consulting contract. 4 weeks after that, I was brought in to lead their Q4 product strategy. And 6 months later, I had an official title, Head of Strategic Growth, Consultant in Residence. I didn't post it on social media. I didn't text the family group, though. For what it's worth, I was quietly re-added sometime in January. But word got out, because people talk. Especially when you're suddenly showing up in business panels and podcast interviews with people who've never had to pretend to love you at Thanksgiving. And that brings us back to today. Back to the second reunion. Yes, they hosted another one. A year later. Same lake house. Same guest list. Only this time, I got a proper invite. Handwritten. With RSVP instructions, and we hope you'll join us. In Aunt Linda's cursive. I almost didn't go. But Rachel called me 2 days before. They don't know I brought you on full time. She said casually. Like it wasn't a bomb waiting to drop. I thought it might be poetic if you showed up. I laughed. You sure you want that kind of drama at a lake house again? She didn't laugh back. Instead, she said, Derek just told the family you're doing okay. That you found some admin work online. Silence on the line. Then she added, I think it's time they saw who's really steering the ship. I arrived late this time. Not fashionably late, deliberately late. I wanted to walk in after the greetings. After the hugs. After the polished introductions had already been made. I didn't need to be part of the warm-up act. I was here for the moment. The lawn looked the same. Maybe a few new string lights. Maybe a fancier tent. But the energy? Different. Thicker. Like something unspoken was hanging in the air. Some of them knew. Maybe not everything. Maybe not the title or the contract. But they knew I wasn't the ghost of last year. I'd stepped into the world again. And this time I was leaving footprints. Derek saw me first. I watched the recognition crawl across his face, followed by the exact same smirk he wore last year. Like muscle memory. But this time, it didn't quite reach his eyes. He walked over, drink in hand, voice a little too loud. Well, look who decided to show up. The prodigal consultant? There it was. The dig, wrapped in a joke, disguised as charm. I didn't flinch. Hi Derek, I said calmly. You look exactly the same. Rachel appeared behind him, eyes flicking to mine with a glint of something electric. She kissed his cheek absently, then turned to me with a grin. I saved you a seat, she said, near the front. That one line sent a ripple through the air around us. I felt it. Derek definitely did. At that moment, he realized 2 things. 1. I wasn't alone in this room anymore. And 2. Rachel wasn't playing for his team today. We walked together toward the main table. Yes. That table. The one for the planning committee. The family council. The aunts and uncles who pretended they held the center of this universe. Rachel didn't say much on the way there. She didn't need to. Her presence beside me was the loudest statement in the room. A few cousins stared. Aunt Linda's mouth twitched. Uncle David whispered something that sounded like, is that her? Like I was a rumor walking. And then it happened. Midway through dinner, someone clinked a glass. Rachel stood up. I hope you don't mind, she said warmly, but I wanted to say a few words. Not just as Derek's fiancée, but as someone who married into this family with open eyes. Silence. She looked around, smiled, then locked eyes with me. Last year, I met someone here who surprised me. Someone I didn't know well, but who left a bigger impression than anyone else that day. She didn't come to impress. She didn't come to be noticed. But she showed me, quietly, humbly, what true leadership looks like. Murmurs, shifting chairs, all eyes on me. Rachel continued, over the past year, that woman has become my mentor, my strategist, and, quite frankly, the backbone of the company I co-founded. So if anyone still thinks she's just doing some online thing, I'd suggest they Google her name. Then, with a calm that sliced deeper than any insult Derek ever threw at me, she turned back to me, raised her glass, and said, to the woman who built her own seat at the table, my boss. There it was. No fireworks, no dramatic music, just truth, spoken cleanly, unapologetically, in front of the people who once laughed. Derek looked like he'd swallowed a stone. I didn't stand, didn't gloat, I simply nodded, lifted my glass, and sipped, while the room tried to rearrange everything they thought they knew. And for the first time in years, I felt no anger, no need for revenge, because this was the revenge, and I hadn't raised my voice once. You'd be surprised how loud a room can get after a single quiet truth is spoken. There wasn't applause. There wasn't gasping. Just silence. Thick, complicated silence. The kind that doesn't know where to look or what to do next. People suddenly found the condensation on their glasses fascinating. Forks scraped plates with a little too much focus. Even the kids seemed to quiet down. As if the universe itself had just shifted by a few inches. Rachel sat back down like she hadn't just dropped a bomb in the middle of the family's perfect little picnic. I didn't look at Derek. I didn't need to. I felt him shrinking. Not because I won. Not because I embarrassed him. But because, for the first time, he wasn't the biggest thing in the room. He wasn't the narrative everyone else revolved around. And he didn't know how to handle it. But others noticed. My cousin Jen, who'd once giggled when I said I ran a consulting agency, now leaned in and asked, "So, do you specialize in sustainability only? Or other industries too?" And Uncle David, Uncle My Lake House My Rules David, actually stood up. Walked over, and offered me his card. "You know, my firm's had some growth issues lately," he said, sheepish. "Maybe we could chat." It was surreal. Like watching the entire family slowly adjust their glasses to see something that had been there all along, but suddenly looked unfamiliar. Sharper, clearer. But the one who didn't say anything? Mom. She sat across the table, purse in her lap, eyes locked on her food. She hadn't clapped, hadn't toasted, hadn't moved, just sat. That hurt more than I expected. All my life, I had craved one thing from her, not praise. Not approval, but recognition. A simple "I see you." And even now, with the world shifting around me, she refused to look up. After dinner, I wandered toward the back of the garden. Just to breathe, just to feel everything I'd kept bottled for so long. That's when Rachel came to find me again. "She didn't look at you," she said softly. "Did she?" I shook my head, arms crossed. I thought maybe this time. Rachel stepped beside me, hands tucked into the pockets of her blazer. "She doesn't know how," she said. "Some people can't acknowledge what they never supported. It forces them to confront their own failure." I didn't speak. My throat was tight. "She knows you've made it," Rachel added. "That's why she can't look at you." I took a slow breath. It's not about her anymore. Not really. It's just, part of me still wanted her to smile. To be proud. Rachel reached out and touched my arm, gentle. Grounding. "She may never be able to give you that," she said, "but you've already earned something bigger." "What's that?" I asked. She smiled. "Yourself. The version of you who didn't fold." And that? That hit deeper than any toast. Any title. Any public vindication. Because it was true. For years, I fought to be seen by them. To matter in their eyes. But tonight, something shifted. Not just around me. But in me. They didn't have power over me anymore. Not their silence. Not their smirks. Not even their carefully orchestrated exclusions. I wasn't trying to be in their circle anymore. Because I'd built my own. And somehow, somewhere along the way, people had chosen to stand in it, with me. Not because of my last name. Not because of obligation. But because they saw value. Because they saw me. A week after the reunion, I received a letter. Not an email. Not a text. An actual letter. On cream-colored stationery with my mother's handwriting on the front. I stared at it for a long time before opening it. Inside, only a single sentence. "I'm glad you're doing well. No love, Mom. No apology. No warmth. Just that." I folded it once, placed it back into the envelope, and slid it into the back of my desk drawer. I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I just let it be. Some people will only ever give you a thimble of love because that's all they ever learned how to carry. I had finally stopped begging them to pour from an empty cup. Instead, I poured into myself, into my work, into the people who saw me fully, without history distorting their view. Rachel and I continued to work together, side by side, not as a pity project, but as true collaborators, partners in vision, co-architects of something meaningful. Lunara launched a new growth initiative that year. My fingerprints were on every slide deck. Every pitch. Every product pivot that earned headlines in niche industry blogs I used to read quietly in coffee shops. And the craziest part? I didn't tell anyone in the family. There was no need. I no longer needed them to clap. I didn't care if they updated their mental resume of who I was. My story no longer depended on their footnotes. But I did do one thing. I bought a house. Not a huge one, just a warm, sunlit place on a quiet street with a garden in the back and a small office with a big window. I planted lavender and rosemary in the front. Left the porch light on at night, not because anyone was coming, but because I was finally home. And then, without overthinking it, I hosted something of my own. Not a reunion, just a gathering. People came, some from the industry, some from the neighborhood, some I'd met along the way in the slow climb up. Rachel and Priya were there. So was Jen, surprisingly, with a bottle of wine and a sheepish smile. No place cards, no fancy speeches, just honest connection. Someone asked, halfway through the evening, "How did you get started?" I paused, wine glass in hand, and I said, "I think I just got tired of waiting for permission." They laughed. Not the kind of laughter I used to shrink beneath, but the kind that says we get it. And in that moment, I realized something. I didn't need to rewrite my family's story. I just needed to stop letting them write mine. They could keep their reunions, their inside jokes, their measured compliments. I had built something else. Something quieter, stronger. A life not rooted in proving, but in being. And maybe, just maybe, that's the most powerful kind of revenge. Not to win louder, but to live freer. Because in the end, the one who laughed at me, he's still talking about who he used to be. And me? I'm becoming someone new every day.